Just so everyone knows, there are some people who aren't able to be here tonight, so because of that, we are recording the meeting so that it can be played on the township cable channel and on YouTube. That's why we're sitting up here, and we would ask that anybody who talks or has questions or comments, just if they could come up to the podium so that they could use the microphone. That way, it'll come up on the recording. So appreciate that. With that, welcome to the biannual constituent meeting that Commissioner Siegel, Commissioner Hart, and I have for our respective wards. For those of you who have been here before, we'll follow much a similar pattern. There's a couple things that are probably highlighted in each ward that we'll just touch on quickly. We'll have an update from the chief of police regarding a couple issues. We have representatives of the township here to hopefully answer any questions you have. And if no one up here can answer the question you have, certainly there's people up here who are in the position to find out that answer and get it back to you as soon as possible. So we appreciate you all from coming. And with that, Commissioner Siegel, do you want to do introductions and give a statement?
Oh, sure. I'll introduce everyone. We have our zoning officer, codes officer, Kelly Kirk at the far left, head of the codes department, Joe Celia, our assistant township manager, Amy Cuthbertson, Commissioner Hart, chief of police, John Viola, deputy chief of police, Joe Hagan, public works director, Dan Mariani, and magisterial district justice, Lisa Lasianca. And as I like to say, these are the people who make us look good. They're the ones who do the day-to-day work. They're the ones who really deserve the thank yous when the work gets done and the trash gets picked up or anything that happens in the township. So I'll start by thanking them for all you do because we really do appreciate it. This is a very well-run township, and it's because of these people and our township manager, who this would have been his first meeting with us, but he is at a meeting and is actually flying in tonight, so he could not be with us. That's Dave Berman. He joined us a few months ago and has been an excellent addition to the township staff. I will begin with one piece of news and information that I got this afternoon, but I think will make people happy. For those of you who might have noticed, we do have some traffic in this township, and some of it emanates from the Blue Route. We learned this afternoon that as early as tomorrow, but we expect by Thanksgiving, the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission will vote on whether to fund a $2.85 million project that this board has worked on. It started when Commissioner D'Amelio and I went to a Marple meeting, and it has since involved the entire board, the township staff, our state senator, our state rep, to reconstruct the entire area in Haverford Township between Lawrence Road, Westchester Pike, South Lawrence Road, which is in Marple, and the entrances to the Blue Route, creating a dedicated lane onto the Blue Route that will not have to stop at the traffic light at Lawrence Road, and creating new traffic patterns in that area to not fix the entire problem, but to significantly reduce the problems. PennDOT has had this project on the books for quite a few years. Once we learned of the impending shopping center in Marple that is opening probably by the end of this month or certainly by early next month, and the massive influx of cars, Commissioner D'Amelio, I brought it to the board. The board was completely behind us. We passed resolutions, the township and the staff worked, and we worked tirelessly with PennDOT on this. PennDOT is actually the applicant for this grant through the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission. And when the DVRPC announced their agenda for tomorrow, we are one of the agenda items, along with, I believe it's $67 million in total grants throughout the region. We are extremely optimistic that this will be approved. And if it is, it will begin the start of a process, including bidding and everything that is expected to take 2 years. But once it is done, all involved, the PennDOT engineers, the township engineers, and all the other experts we have to rely on have told us that this will have a significant positive impact on reducing the stress on township roads, because the Blue Route causes a stress everywhere in this township, particularly during the morning rush. It doesn't matter where you are, every road leads to the Blue Route. So I've been thrilled. I've spent my entire time as a commissioner dealing with that. I live 3 blocks from that intersection. Amy lives 4 blocks maybe. And so we live it and we know how bad it is, but all of you do. So we are hopeful. We still have to wait for the vote from DVRPC, but it's expected to be approved because PennDOT is the applicant. And once it is, we'll let you know. But I'm just thrilled to be able to say it seems like it's happening. So that's my news.
Okay, and there's a couple of things happening in the 8th Ward, and we'll start with traffic. The Manoa Road Bridge has been closed since the spring. Our most recent update is they expect to open November 8th, so it should be soon. The old Manoa Bridge will not be out by then, but that shouldn't take a long time. I've gotten a lot of calls. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of people working there. This is a PennDOT project, so really the township is not involved. We're not paying the bills, so they're not, we can push them along, but ultimately, they're actually coming in pretty close to what they initially said. They thought they would be done at the end of October. So hopefully the paving gets done and will be open November 8th. In regards to the Brookline School and the library, just going to get a lot of questions. Not everybody, a lot of people have heard this, but I'm just going to kind of go through the history of how we got to where we are now. In January 2018, Commissioner Wexler and Larry Gentile and I had a meeting with the school district about something that was going on at Chatham Park. And at the end of the meeting, they just happened to mention to us, by the way, we have no use for the Brookline School. We are planning on selling it. And we came out of the meeting and said, seems like this is a township resource. Let's see what we can work with the school district to keep it. Had the school district decided to sell it, it's zoned institutional, so any type of institutional entity could have come in there pretty easily, and we felt, again, we wanted to keep it, we wanted to keep the park land. We also were in the midst of potentially starting a renovation of the library. We felt this was a site that we should at least consider for the library. Now, that was my first month in office. I've come to find out that government works very slowly. So 15 months later, we did have the property transferred to the township at basically no cost. We, subsequent to that, our engineers looked at it, the library engineers looked at the building. The estimates that have come out to renovate the building were 9 to 10 million. That was based on earlier estimates and a review by the engineer. The library looked at it and did not feel that the current building would be suitable to put for the library. There's a number of reasons for that, and as we move along, they will probably specify, but in large part, it was because they did not feel they could get adequate parking with the current building, even though they would have more parking than they have now at the Mill Road site. They did not want to impact the neighborhood with cars, so they wanted to try to get as much parking as possible on the lot. So they were not, again, they're not interested in moving there if that's the building that we're at. In the last couple of months, the board has done a couple of things. We are putting out bids to see what it would cost to demolish the building. That does not mean the building is going to be demolished, but we need to know the cost. And we've also had our township engineer is doing a cost estimate of what it would cost to renovate the library at its current site versus building a new building at the Brookline site. And we are waiting. I don't think we're going to have those estimates before December, and I think the latest would be January. So that's where things stand at the present. I'm sure there's going to be more questions about that, but that was just the history. And then I want to have Chief Viola take over. I know a lot of people are concerned about the events in Chatham Village, and he's going to give us an update.
So on October 16th, there was a sexual assault that happened in a house in Chatham Village. A 76-year-old female reported that a male had entered her house and was in her home for about 20 minutes, and then we believe through an unlocked door. The male was described as a white male in his 50s, being about 5'6", stumpy build, olive complexion, possibly with a bushy beard with black and white wirely hair. He was also wearing a flat brim baseball cap, tiger stripe bandana that was black and orange covering his face, also wearing a black t-shirt along with camouflage pants. She called 911, obviously called 911, police responded. So the question arose right after the assault that she was adamant that she did not want any information to be released. And we were doing an in-depth investigation. And there was some questions of why we held the information for 4.5 days. So the police department held off releasing this information out of respect for the victim's wishes, the victim's privacy, the victim's safety, and the ongoing investigation, which much information had to be verified. It's a very delicate balance between victims' privacy rights and public safety. If at any time I believe that there was imminent danger to the public, information would have been released immediately. We obviously have increased patrols in the area. We have unmarked cars in the areas. We have plainclothes police officers in that whole area down there. So we are still investigating it. We've had the victim in numerous times for more conversation, attempted to have a drawing, but we couldn't get one that was good enough to release to the public. So this was not just something we took very lightly as far as holding on to this. We normally release information for crimes immediately so the public is aware of it. It can help us possibly arrest any suspects involved in any serious crimes. But because of this seriousness of this and the victim's concerns and her safety, we felt that holding onto this information was in the best interest of everyone. So it wasn't just my decision. We talked about this, my command staff, the lieutenant, the deputy chief. We had multiple discussions on this. I did notify the commissioners, but we asked them also to hold it before putting any public statements out. Once we released it, the news came here. I did talk to them. I think it went in the newspapers also. Most of the news stations were aware of it, and the information is out there. So if anybody has any questions with this particular incident, I'd be more than glad to answer them if I could. So,
Ask you actually to come up to the, and if there's more seats over here.
So I'm a member, I live in Chatham Village on Myrtle, and I've had some experience with random people walking through my streets, and one in particular that I remember, there was a gentleman who was knocking on my door at like 2 in the morning, and luckily my door was locked. I didn't have, I mean, we didn't have one of those cameras at the time. We do now. And by the way, thank you. One of your detectives did come around investigating to see if we could use the video footage, which I appreciated. But my initial question is, was there any sense that this person was intoxicated or didn't have his wits with him?
there was no report of any alcohol that she smelled.
Okay.
That she told us. She was very clear in what he looked like, very descriptive. Whether he had all his wits about him, she didn't say anything to the contrary. Let me just say that.
Okay.
So-
Because my first inclination, living there for 15 years, is the hotel on City Line Avenue.
I'll just say we did look at that. We went over to the hotel, you want to call it that, and we looked at the videos through that entire night.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We've had more calls about that
Yes, we fully
hotel.
understand that, yes.
And if there's anything I can do to help bring that building
Well, it's Upper Darby, so we don't have-
legitimate, we'll
Yeah,
say, to
yes.
make it legitimate.
Yes.
Nothing,
It was legitimate at one time.
right.
so-
If I can bring it back to that,
Yes.
talk to me afterwards, I'll do whatever it takes, right?
We
'Cause
are
I-
down there a lot along with Upper Darby. Obviously, they have more problems because it's in their town, but we are down there a lot also.
And I'm in a bad spot, not to bring this to a different topic, but I'm in a bad spot because anytime I make a phone call about that building, I'm in Haverford, that's in Upper Darby.
Right.
Philadelphia is down the road, and it's always a debate on who of you guys I should be calling. Should I be calling you guys about it? Should I be calling Upper Darby Township? Should I call the police? So it's just a lot of,
Well, you can always call, if you have an issue, an immediate issue, call 911.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you have an
I'm-
issue
I'm-
that can wait till the next week, you can feel free to call any of us, and we'll do
I'm
our
talking
best.
more long-term.
Yeah,
than-
well, yeah.
If you ask me, that's where the problem starts.
I think if you asked Upper Darby, they would tell you tear it down also, so,
Yeah, so, thank you.
thank you very much.
A question about this. In, yeah, in the last week, I was at home during the day, and a detective from from your police force, he knocked on my door, and I came outside, and he asked if I knew anything about an abandoned car across the street from me. The passenger side tire was like almost completely chewed up. I said no, I hadn't seen it before. I don't know who owns it. And then he asked, do you mind if I walk through your backyard and down the hill? I'm doing an investigation. And I was like, okay. And I asked, I asked what it was about, and he said, like, a burglary down on Myrtle. But this happened like right before the news came out about the sexual assault, and I wasn't sure if, well, it kind of scared me because I thought that he was, I think trying to like pick up tracks of somebody who had gone through our yard and down the hill in the back, and I was wondering, like, was he really like investigating the sexual assault but didn't want to scare me? I don't know, but like since then like oftentimes when the weather's nice, I'll go on my back deck and do work. And ever since then, I'm like too afraid to go back out there. So I'm just, I don't know if there's any connection, or I don't know.
Connection to the abandoned car and the detective?
Yeah, like would it, like sometimes will a detective say like it's something else so as not to
Well,
concern?
I'm sure he probably didn't want to frighten you at the time. I'm not sure what detective, we had a lot of them down there
Yeah.
over the past few days, so. But sometimes when he's doing investigations, it's easier just to move along with it, just so he had a burglary, and he was probably looking for evidence through the backyards. We always go back and double check, triple check, in case we had missed something at nighttime, so we always send different people down to do the same check. And they may have been in your backyard before and you didn't know it. So, but.
Because he asked if I had seen a man like go through back there, and
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, was there also a burglary on
No,
that
it's
road?
all the same thing. There wasn't an additional burglary, no.
Okay,
It's all the same incident,
okay.
right? And next time when we do, if we have, hopefully we'll never have something like this, but I'll instruct the detectives, they talk to somebody to make sure that they tell you exactly what's going on and why they're there.
Yeah, because I mentioned it to my husband, and he was like, I don't think that they could misrepresent what they're actually investigating. He's like, I don't know, like,
Well,
he's like,
sometimes the detectives will do that so that you don't frighten somebody even more, but the
Yeah.
information really should be accurate in what he's telling you, but we'll correct that,
okay.
okay?
Like, do you think it is, like, safe during the daytime to be
During the daytime,
outside of our
yes, look,
homes? I'm sorry,
no, that's all right, no, that's fine.
It was
You're-
very disconcerting.
No, that's why we're talking about it. It is disconcerting. I live very close to that myself, and my wife is also very concerned. So,
Yeah.
no, it is something to be worried about. And sadly, in this world we live in, things are happening more and more. So I could only suggest to people is just to be aware, lock your doors at all times. And one of the things, I'll just bring it up now while I'm thinking about it, if you see something, no matter what it is, and you have any doubt in your mind at all, call 911 when you see it. Don't wait a day or so and talk to somebody like, ooh, I should have called. It may be something related to something else we're doing. So we always encourage, don't feel bad about calling 911. It's an emergency and a non-emergency line. Dispatchers get the information in media and send it right down to us. Okay. Somebody else had their hand raised? I think you were first here, so then we'll, go ahead.
Hi. Just a little bit more information. You said you believe it was through a door or a window.
was-
Is that
it
just
was-
because there was
it's-
no forced entry, or
There was no forced entry.
was it? Do we know if it was a door or window? Does the victim remember leaving something unlocked, or is she just?
She does leave her house unlocked.
She does.
Yes.
So do we know if it was a door or a window specifically?
Well, the window that she thought maybe could have been, we looked at that. We don't think it's even a possibility.
Was it around the back of the house?
Yes.
Yeah,
Back
the
of
window
the
was the back of
house?
the house, yes.
Okay. And I think I read that there was some DNA evidence. I
Yes,
know
there
you
is
probably-
evidence that we have collected, and it's at the lab. It takes a little bit of time to do DNA evidence. So we have a partial fingerprint that's being analyzed.
Okay.
And we also, so if there's DNA evidence that is recovered from that, and this person is in the system, they will identify it right away.
Okay.
And if, anything that comes up, we'll have Jerry put a blast out, and we'll put a news release out also.
Okay.
If we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay?
Do you think it was also a burglary, or was it?
No, the person took some money, but didn't take all of her money. She said she offered her money, and he said, no, I only want half of it. So, it does,
I'm sorry. That's okay. Do we believe the motive was sexual assault, or do we think that was a subsequent action for breaking into the house?
I don't have that answer. I'd be lying if I said yes or no to one or the other. It could have been an entry for just looking for money, or it could have been an entry to his sexual assault, and the money was just a sideline to it. So I don't know that yet. We are still investigating. We still have a lot of questions we have to get answered.
That's okay. You probably don't know this then either, but are you feeling that this was someone who was targeted or random, or you just don't know yet?
I'll let you answer that.
We're still investigating. The victim did tell us that she may have seen him before, but she wasn't clear. She couldn't be 100% sure. She said the description of the way he walked, she may have recognized him from somebody being in the neighborhood before, but we're not 100% sure the victim knew the actor.
And there's a lot of things we really can't share tonight just because of the investigation and the victim's rights. So,
And I'm guessing then you probably can't share what street this happened on.
close to Township Line and close to the Summit and close to the P&W tracks. Is that fair enough?
The news camera showed St. James Church. A bunch of us are here from Bennington Road, so we
was?
back onto,
It was Myrtle Avenue. I'll share that
okay,
with you.
Lower Myrtle?
Yes. You say Lower Myrtle, Township Line Myrtle.
Yes. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Somebody else had a hand up?
Was there a weapon involved? That's what I'm-
We
Come
just
on up.
need to.
Hi, I live alone, so I live in Chattanooga. Was there a weapon involved? I mean, he just got in
She
there?
said he had a box cutter.
Okay,
No gun or knife, but she said she saw a box cutter.
okay. All right. I mean, I do get concerned when I leave a supermarket and I come home and I always look to make sure no one's following me. But
Sure.
I mean, I think it's important for a lot of women in the area to also to know, I have a sensor light. You know, if you have sensor lights around your home, if somebody comes in the middle of the night, the lights go on. Sometimes I hope that frightens somebody to go away. So I think that's a
Well,
good-
look, we're a big advocate of lighting. I know personally, I light my house up like it's a
Right.
landing strip, so.
Yeah. I'm
But
just
it's
mentioning it. I'm
important. You
like-
should have lots of lights. I mean, I
Right.
live very close to the Grange playground, and it's dark behind my house,
Yeah.
so.
And I mean, I used to not lock my doors in the past, and now we all lock our doors.
You
and
have to lock everything.
Especially
And
when I
lock
go
your
to-
cars too, please.
I lock our cars, and I lock my door. I mean, especially at night, I'm very careful about making
Yes.
sure my doors are locked. But the window issues, you know, I know that sometimes we close them, we don't lock them, and the newer windows, you can push them. So he said he came in the back door, it wasn't locked, so that's
it
good to
wasn't
know that. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions on this or anything else? Yes.
Real quick, another quick one. So is it typical that it's only Haverford police officers in a situation like this? Or should there be someone from Upper Darby because
So,
they're,
well, we share all of our information, so we don't need, we wouldn't have Upper Darby investigating it with us, nor would they have us, but we immediately share. If an incident happens, they get it
okay,
as
so there is
timely.
coordination.
Yes.
But it's not typical to have someone from Upper Darby
No,
here.
but our detectives put it out to all the surrounding police department. We have ways of communicating, it's immediate.
Okay.
And detectives share information constantly.
Okay, thank you.
And not just locally, across the whole region. Yes.
I'm on Myrtle, and I was robbed 3 years ago, and they just kicked in the back door. And now I'm home during the day, and I notice there's a lot of solicitors,
There certainly is.
and they come back like 2, 3 times, and sometimes it's 7 o'clock at night.
Correct.
Of course, I don't answer the door, but I run right to the camera, and I can see.
Mm-hmm.
And it's scary, and it causes me anxiety. I'm like, why are all these people knocking on my door, and
That's
then
a
I
sure
don't
door.
answer, and then they come back,
Yeah.
and then it's like 3 times a
The
day.
town is inundated with solicitors, and our ordinance, and I'll let you maybe talk about that, just how we had to change it very recently because it was violating, yes.
We have a no soliciting ordinance in the township. If you post a no soliciting sign on your property, or you register through the township, we have through the website, a place where you can register do not solicit, persons soliciting commercially are prohibited from soliciting. Unfortunately, you can't stop politicians, religious groups, et cetera, political groups. That does raise constitutional issues, and we can't do that. So the first step is to make sure you either have a sign or you register or both. The second is, if you have questions, call the police. If you believe someone is soliciting and they're inappropriate, call the police. I've done it at my office because it applies to businesses. I've done it at my house. And I recommend that neighbors do it because we get people almost every day who want to, sell us new windows, doors, and anything else. So that's your first line, and don't answer the door if you don't know who it is. Don't ever do that. But the chief said it. Any questions, call the police. I mean, we had an unusual car in front of my house a few times, and I contacted the police, and they figured out what it was. But it seemed very suspicious. They're very good, very responsive. 911 is what to call, and they do respond and investigate. So that's always your first. We limit soliciting, I think we changed it to 9 at night. I'm trying to remember the exact hour.
It is 9, yes.
9, because we couldn't limit it to dusk or earlier hours because of certain considerations, including political considerations, because of the fact that, we're right before elections now, and we didn't want any questions raised, that we were preventing candidates from being able to knock on doors, whether new or incumbent. So we have to balance the First Amendment with what our ordinance. It's been revised twice since I'm a commissioner, and it's been in extensive consultation with our solicitor. So we think we have the balance now.
And anybody that's selling any goods, they have to be permitted by the police department. So if the solicitor does come to your house and you don't even want to answer the door, you can still call us. We'll check them. And we do find them with records, and we do find them when they don't have a permit, and then we send them on their way. So feel free to call anytime. We answer those calls many, many times in the course of 24 hours.
So I was told there's going to be like unmarked cars, unmarked policemen walking the area?
Not walking, but in the area, yes.
Oh, so you're not walking, because I'm wondering more the Grange. A
The
lot of
Grange
people,
Playground or Grange Estate?
the estate, a lot of
Okay.
people walk their dogs there,
Right.
I know there's a lot of my kids played down there when they were younger. Is that, stay away from that area?
No,
Are
I
you
wouldn't say stay
patrolling
away.
that
There's police
area?
cars that go through there all the time. And the officers write reports in their cars because we have computers, and they'll sit in areas like that and do still call it paperwork, but do their paperwork in the car. So, we encourage them to sit in neighborhoods and do their work like that. So, no, I wouldn't say it's unsafe down there. Look, it's a wooded area. Never know what's going to happen, in situations like that. I mean, I walk back there a lot also, and it's always a concern. My kids used to walk back there too. But
Yeah, they cut through for school.
Yes, yeah. So you know, you got to be more and more aware from when we were kids, things were a lot different, and just it's a bad world out there.
How long will you be patrolling until he's found? Is there a time frame?
We'll stay on it, and we'll stay on it for a long period of time. So you can rest easy that, you know, we'll have policemen in the area at all times. And remember, each district, they're relatively small districts, have a dedicated car to that area anyway. But then we double it up, and then we have our unmarked down there also.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We could open it up to everything else.
Yeah, we can open it up to any other questions. I would just say, for any third ward residents, everybody talked about traffic. Traffic's really an issue throughout Haverford Township, and the third ward's no different. But there is also some good news there. Eagle Road is set to be milled starting October 27th and will be repaved from Township Line to Earlington. So once they get started, it'll be done overnight. And once that gets started, it'll hopefully move pretty quickly. Should be a little bit quicker than it took them to do Darby, just because it's a little bit less distance. But it's a PennDOT project. The Ardmore Avenue Bridge construction continues to cause traffic nightmares on both sides of the golf course, certainly throughout parts of the third ward in Merwood Park and Marion Golf Manor. When the project first started, police upped enforcement in the area. We also had additional speedage signs. We then repeated that process the first couple of weeks once school was back. We're now about a month and a half, 2 months after school starts, and traffic patterns have emerged, but people's nerves are getting a bit frayed. We've had a couple incidents, and I would say there's obviously people cutting through the neighborhood, and the police are going to be doing some extra enforcement in terms of speeding and stop signs and things of that nature. There's also people who live in our neighborhoods who are cutting through them, and I would just ask everyone, whether they live in that neighborhood or not, to just consider that, you know, there's kids playing in the neighborhood, and you may think that you're not speeding, but I can assure you the mom or dad that's sitting on the front lawn watching their kids play basketball thinks you are. So, you know, if you're not on Eagle and you're not on Darby and you're not on Haverford, just try to maybe drive a little bit slower, just because there is increased traffic and increased cars in those areas. There's obviously, certainly, I've heard from many residents, there's obviously certain like touch points, Merwood Lane, Hathaway, certainly, the bridge under Ardmore Junction, and we've put up additional signage there. We're consistently monitoring it. I know at the bridge at Ardmore Junction, right now it's police considered a lot of different options as to what we could do there, and I know there's certain residents that are frustrated that it's one car at a time, but that's really a safety precaution to assure that there's not an accident. It's, you know, certainly at various times before this Ardmore Avenue Bridge project, multiple cars passed at one time. At this point, we have signage up indicating it's one car at a time, but that's really just a safety precaution because we have so many people who are not familiar with the area and are turning down those lanes. So we certainly understand, the police understand everybody's frustration. We're frustrated by it too. I will, just as an update for the Ardmore Avenue Bridge, it is on schedule. In terms of they have not used many of their sort of makeup days that are built into the contract, so it's still scheduled to be completed in June of 2020. And, you know, as I said, just try to be considerate and be nice to your fellow neighbors. And I don't know, and then we'll just open it up. Obviously, after the update that the chief gave, it's an ongoing investigation, and my personal belief as a commissioner is I let the police do their job and I don't comment on those investigations. But I would just say that certainly from my perspective, I understand everyone's concern, and I share in your concern and safety. And I assure you that we have an excellent police force who will do everything they can to make sure the person is brought to justice. And you know, they take all our residents of Haverford's safety very seriously. So. You know, we'll stay on top of it. And we'll probably try to move on from that and have a more traditional constituent meeting so we can talk about any issues you want. You can even talk about the Brookline School if you want, Mrs. King. Yes. can't promise we'll have answers for you, Mrs. Kane, but certainly welcome.
No, I came to this meeting thinking it was all about the library. Excuse me, I have a cold. But anyway, I just think that why don't we leave some open space? Why do we have to build a library? Why can't we leave the library where it is? And the people that we live around feel the same way. You don't know what it's like around our house now. The traffic's unbelievable. And we're just going to draw more traffic around Brookline Boulevard, and we all have kids. And there's no open space near our house. Why do we need the library when the library is what? The most used library in Delaware County? Why do we need to move something that's been there since 1935 and is doing so well? And if you ride by there, I ride by in the mornings and stuff. Darby Road is completely open with parking spaces on each side in the morning till like 10:30. Most things happen at the library at the night, in the evening. So, I mean, why do we want to spend money to knock a building down, rebuild, and why can't we just fix up the old library? And what will we do with that building if we move over to Brookline? We already have empty buildings in the community. Taxes, taxes, taxes. So I just don't understand why. So, and I think a lot of other people feel the same way. So if you could just maybe explain it.
Sure. I think you're asking me since you're looking right at me. So,
I'm asking anybody. If you can answer now.
I'm happy to respond. I mean, as Dr. Hart said, where we are right now is that we're going to get cost estimates. Part of what we did is we've had a lot of open meetings, and certainly we've heard concerns, many of which you've just expressed, and concerns of other people who, have concerns about the existing library. And so what we're going to have cost estimates to say how much it costs to knock down the building. We'll have a cost estimate to say how much it costs to leave status quo. We'll have a cost estimate to say how much it'll cost to move the library to the Brookline site, and then a cost estimate to show what it'll cost to renovate the existing library. So, before any of this all happened, this is now 4 years. Like, I've been on the board 4 years, and before I even got on the board, it was approved as part of the building of this building that there was going to be up to $7.5 million that was budgeted to renovate the existing library, and that was scheduled to happen until this meeting with the school district came about. That was on course. The library already started making those designs. So, those numbers will be presented to the board, as Dr. Hart said, in either December at this point or January, and then votes will have to be taken as to sort of which steps to go, and there will then be a direction as to one way or the other. I can tell you that there's two arguments, right? There's the theory that you spend money. If the decision is made to renovate the existing library, right, you're gonna spend money, and you're gonna spend $10 million, and you have the location that's in between the high school and the middle school, and it's currently the most used library in town, and you keep its number one complaint, which is the lack of parking, which is the number one complaint that the library hears on a daily basis that we have heard for 20 years. The argument for the Brookline School is that, if you have a space where you can build a library from scratch, you're building a library that you want, that you can design it to meet the needs of 2020 through 2050, and you can do that and acquire 80 parking spots, and you can design the traffic so that it doesn't go down Sagamore or Casimir, that you have it going one way in and one way out.
But still, the roads are so.
I'm just giving you the arguments. I'm not.
Can I just ask you one more thing?
Let me just finish.
Okay.
The argument to not do it at the Brookline School is that neighborhood, the closest park, and I can tell you as someone who played basketball at Annunciation through most of my childhood, there is no park. The closest one, you have to cross Manoa Road and go to the Grange.
Right.
Or you go in the opposite direction and you go down and you play in the creek, which is not a park, and you go across the train tracks. So I'm certainly well aware that there's not a park there, and that is something that should be considered, and I think that is certainly one of the options.
Right. But like, we just keep building and building and building. Wouldn't it be so nice to have an open space where our kids could play, the fields, nice equipment, a pergola where we could all walk? I have 6 grandchildren that live on the boulevard. My granddaughter just bought a house on the boulevard. She's going to be having children. I mean, it would be just so nice. It's just to have something near our house. And why keep building and building and building? And, as you said, I was reading up all the history on this library, and it said in 1934, they brought somebody in the Secretary of Libraries from Washington. And what her main criteria was, a central location. And that's why it's done so well there, why it is the main library. So, okay, that's just my opinion. I hope somebody else has an opinion. But thanks for listening.
Yeah,
and
I certainly,
hope that you all
there's
make
lots
the
of,
right
there's
decision.
lots of opinions
It's
on it,
just
and the decision will have to be made. And
important. And those buildings, like, what the heck are you going to do with that building?
I will say, the thing that I can guarantee you that I share your opinion with, that we have to make a decision, because
Right.
there's an empty building sitting on Arlington and Sagamore right now.
And
that is,
also the old
and there's an
municipal
there's an
building. What are you
empty
gonna do
building,
with all these
Well,
and
yeah,
there's an empty,
buildings, buildings, buildings?
Just to follow up on that, one of the reasons that the municipal building is still there is that if we renovate the library needs to go someplace during the renovation.
Okay.
And at this point, that's where it
That's
would
the
go.
building, okay.
So we can't move on with that building till we're sure what we're doing with the library.
Okay, you guys, when I talk to you now, I love Haverford Town, wouldn't be anywhere else. I'm going to die here, I think. But thank you for listening.
I just would like to interject. I've chaired the property committee for most of the last 10 years. And you have to understand that what we do isn't just decide to, or recommend, because what we do is recommend, just to build a building or take down a building. We have to consider, and we've done it here, and the board will ultimately make the final decision, a lot of community issues. There are community issues that you deal with neighborhoods. Are you overtaxing the resources of a neighborhood? We also have to look, when it comes to a library, as to what is the best use or best overall needs of a community. The community includes neighborhoods throughout this township. So we have to think about that. I can tell you from the perspective of my ward, the 4th Ward, where we have 15% of our residents are over 80 years old, and a large number of residents are over 60 and 65. They want to use our library, but don't use our library because they are elderly, they need handicap or closer parking, they're not going to walk up and down Darby Road. So they then go to Ludington, are using the library, the resources in another community, and their most common complaint is we pay a lot of taxes, which we've heard here, but we can't use our library. That's a consideration. We also have to consider what are the best uses for every building. We had numerous meetings about this building, including some considering whether we would include a library here. That was ultimately determined not to be the best use because of parking and other considerations. And then we have to consider, if we close one building, what do we do with that resource? The township building is the perfect example. It is sitting because we have to make one decision, and our goal is to make every property as productive as it can be, whether it is the library at the corner or the Brookline School property. So it is a balancing act of a variety of considerations, and ultimately that's what the board of 9 has to evaluate and say what is best for the community. And is there going to be an answer that's going to satisfy everyone? I'm sure it isn't, whatever we decide. But there are a lot of these issues. We look at it from all of those perspectives. You know, we do a lot more than just come out at a meeting and say, oh, here's what we show you. There's been I've chaired the property committee. I've been on this board now since 2008. I've chaired it since 2009 with the exception of 2 years. And we work with township staff. We work with engineers. We have community development people, all of whom are looking at all of those factors. And it's not a simple decision. And no matter what you do, everyone isn't going to be ultimately happy. But the goal is to make the decision that the board believes is best for the community. But we do take a lot of, consideration of all of those factors in our deliberations and our recommendations. We listen to the staff. We have a professional staff. So there are a lot of factors, and, there are impacts on all the communities. You know, we have the reserve, which I call the jewel of the township, but we don't have any way for people to walk there, and so we're working on getting better trails there. There's lots of considerations anywhere you look, and we will be reporting back. It appears that we won't have numbers till December or probably January. I was on the phone with the township engineer today. They're working with the architect, and until we have information that we know we can rely on fully, and they vetted everything, we're not going to be able to report more. But those are some of the things that we do and think about.
On some level, I feel like we're beating a dead horse, but I just wanted to offer the opposite perspective. I live on Manoa and Edgewood, and I'm a teacher at the high school, and I feel like the way that they solved the high school problem way back when was to just fix it up and renovate parts of it, and now we're overpopulated and we have to build on to the high school, and so we just keep putting Band-Aids over bullet wounds. And so I think that renovating the library would be doing the same thing, where we need a new space and an updated, modern area. And also, I feel like there's so much on the other side of the township that it would actually be nice to have some more of like community buildings in our neighborhood. So I disagree with the whole traffic problem. I would love to have the library in our neighborhood. Just my thoughts.
Good evening, 8th Ward on Kenmore Road. Now, I understand no matter what question I asked this evening, there hasn't been all the studies or what have you. So yes, I do have questions about impact studies and traffic studies and what have you. But once this information does come in, and there is, and the library, I'm assuming, will have their report, will there be an opportunity for 8th Ward residents and or 7th Ward residents to meet one-on-one to go over this with the 8th Ward Commissioner?
Yeah, Chris, one, there'll be township meetings, general meetings, but
Right.
I've also said that we would have a special meeting for residents who live right in the area, that we would have somebody from the library there and whoever else, maybe the township engineer, we would have a meeting specifically for local residents.
Super, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm glad you happened to mention the aging population of Havertown, because this doesn't seem to have been brought up. I've been a senior citizen myself for over 10 years. And I did go to our new senior center, and I'm actually, appalled by how we're treating our older adults, our senior citizens. I happen to be a gerontologist, and as we age, we do have diminished hearing. We do have problems with background noises. We don't see as well. There are things that happen to us as a normal part of aging. And now you're grouping the residents of Havertown, who are taxpayers. You put us in a cafeteria in a basement, with cement floors, with no divisions, so that while somebody is trying to play, a game of mahjong over here, and somebody is trying to do artwork over here, you can't hear, you can't focus. When I spoke to the gentleman who presented, he was the CEO of Surrey Services, and I said the other senior centers, Devon, Media, they seem to have more of a selection of activities for us, including dental services, mobile dental services that come there. And the comment from the president, the CEO, was, "You sound very jealous." And I was like, really, really disgruntled, didn't say anything, but the thing was that I just want the same services that AAA, that the Department of Aging, in Pennsylvania, that we are all entitled to as seniors. So I know we left Brookline, and I was told that the placement in the basement, is going to be a permanent thing. Guys can't even play pool anymore. They used to love to play pool. There's not even a pool table for them to play. So it's just really, it's disgruntling, and I know, the kids need parks, and, you know, and that's all well and good, and we need more schools. But again, the senior citizens, and I've been a resident of Haverford Town for over 30 years, you know, our taxpayer monies are helping to grow our community. So I just really need to say, what are we doing about the senior citizens? And there is a, you know, even the volunteers I spoke with today, I kind of did a little quick survey, and they're getting headaches at the end of the day from, you know, hearing, you know, all this noise. And it's so.
Yeah, I did recently meet with Bob Madonna, who's the CEO of Surrey. There's a couple things. One, Surrey's a private, it's not a township-run organization. The facility in Devon is wonderful. They got a $2 million gift, not from the township, but a gift to build it.
Person?
Yes.
Anybody?
Yeah, that's right. And the dental services in Chester, there's an organization in Chester County that provides free services, and unfortunately, it's just the Chester County facility. We are trying to, they were renting space at Brookline, they couldn't stay there. They were looking a lot, Annunciation, we worked something out, or they worked something out. And we're going to work to see if we can do something out. I agree. I've been down there, and I agree it's far from ideal. But there's space limitations. So
Yeah, and attendance has been, you know, going down, and that's the other thing I just want to add. We have the CREC. It's difficult, you know, for some people to drive there. We were told in this speech, well, you know, take a drive out to Devon. Some people can't do that.
Right.
They can't get out to Devon, or they can't go to media, you know, so it's just really, it's a real difficult, you know, situation, and I hope you consider us. Plus, you need to attract, how should I say this, healthier or different types of senior citizens, you know, to go, like get these people from the Ludington Library, you know, to become a part of us at a senior center, because there's a lot you can do to attract, I think, younger senior citizens, if that makes sense without
Right.
insulting anybody.
I'm there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Jim McGarity, 7th Ward Commissioner, and I'm going to speak about what Mr. Connell just spoke about, and that's the Brookline School. And basically, my opinion of the Brookline School, and I'm going to state it, you fellas and girls can state your opinions up there. I'm going to state it. It's a waste of money. We don't need it. The library where it is presently perfect. It's the best-selling library in Delaware County. Basically, 2 forms of transportation, whereas at Brookline School, it would be 1 form of transportation. The other things are basically the library at the current location of Darby and Mill Road. A lot of my neighbors like it there. I'm in the 400 block of Kenmore, right across the street from Brookline School. I'm a senior citizen, I'm 74 years old, and we can't afford it. And I'm talking about the older people and the younger people. They just can't afford this. And anybody that wants to take a position tonight can take a position. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm stating my position. So I just want you to know that's my opinion, and I certainly hope that they come out with these figures a lot faster than they're doing, so that the people by the end of this year will know exactly what's going on and what we can afford and what we cannot afford. And I don't think we can afford a new building at Brookline School. I agree with everybody. The play area there is great. Temple Lutheran uses their kids to come down there and play there all the time. We'll be losing all that. And I believe that that is a good place for the people. And I can tell you, not only in my ward, I'm telling you, a lot of 8th Ward people have contacted me, urging me to speak out. And right now, I guess I'm the only one that's speaking out opposed to this. But anybody at the next board meeting, if you want, let's ask them their opinion of what they feel, and I think it's fair that all these citizens know exactly where everybody feels on this. Thank you.
Jimmy, yeah, I would just say we would like to get more information before we say how we feel about things. And I wanted to correct one thing. Even if the library moved there, the playground stays, the green space stays. So we've kind of made that commitment. So I mean, I'm not sure which is better, to renovate or to move, but the green space that's there is going to stay there.
Well, one thing I didn't mention is that even with the green space you're talking about, I mean, to me, libraries are for our younger people mainly. I'm not saying older people don't go there. A lot of older people go there. But the feeder system we have there with the senior high school coming down, going into the library. After that, we all know they go into Senzo's and get a pizza and a soda. The middle school comes down and they go in there. That's one of the reasons why it's so successful. And these are all youth that we're trying to educate, and I feel that we are doing that by them going in there and doing that. I don't feel a lot of those youths from the senior high and the middle school will come to Brookline School. It's just too far a walk, and there's no place to go for a pizza and a soda after that. So I have to return a phone call, but thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I'll be back.
I just want to, if I could,
Good evening,
before,
Tony Mornelli. Oh, yes, sure.
I just wanted to explain something. Libraries and the property committee, including Mr. McGarity, who sits on the committee, knows well that libraries are not just for kids. Libraries are community centers. Libraries are one of the main reasons people move to communities. They move to communities because we have good libraries. They move because we have parks and playgrounds and quality of life facilities. We have a library in this township that in a 29,000 square foot retrofitted building that barely functions, and that this township and that this board have spent a lot of money on putting Band-Aids on, does not fully serve the community. It serves the community as well as is possible in that facility. My view, and people know it, we need a new library, whether it's at the Brookline School or some other location. And we have a 29,000 square foot library when modern library design says we need a 39,000 square foot library. We need a facility on one floor, not on multiple floors with steps and other areas that are detracting from and taking away usable space. We need a facility that's one floor. Why? Because it is adaptable. It is adaptable to do programs for seniors, programs for children, programs for the entire community, and becomes a center of a community. In my view, we are not fully serving our community with the current library, even though they do the most they can. The president of the library, Phil Goldsmith, spoke at length about how the library is committed to programming, including in conjunction with SERI and other groups, for seniors, just as they do for kids. And so, from my perspective, whether it is the Brookline School location, we've spent years studying. As I said, I've been chairing the committee most of the last decade, trying to find a location. Whether the Brookline School ends up being it, I don't know that. I'm one of 9 votes. But I can tell you that as good a location as the library has, and it is in the best location, it is not serving residents when 250,000 people are subject to 17 parking spots, 1 handicap spot, and you tell seniors basically, go try to find a spot on Darby Road, maybe you want to park across the street, and try to cross Darby Road where there isn't even a crosswalk on the library side fully there. We need to do, I don't have all the answers. We have a great community. We put in a ton of services. This community has great services. But for the library, we do as much as we can in what I think is an underfitted, building, and you can't keep putting Band-Aids on everything. And I don't know what we're going to ultimately decide, this board or however this board is constituted after the first of the year, because we're not going to vote on it, certainly till next year. But there are a lot of considerations. And to suggest that simply location or preference of neighbors is the only consideration, no, we have a lot to think about, and we're going to think about it. We've spent countless hours addressing this publicly and through other meetings. So that's a global perspective that covers more than, what I believe are significant misperceptions about the use of a modern library.
Okay. Yeah, Tony Mornelli, Mill Road. I think there may be one point that has been overlooked in this whole discussion, and that is some kind of a medium road between the current library and the Brookline School and the preservation of an historic building in the Brookline School. We know the interior, I've said this before, but I'll repeat, we know the interior of that building is totally useless, but the facade is not. We could certainly, and we have no price for what would it cost to maintain the facade of the Brookline School, to maintain and keep an historic building, which is now 100 years old, and which was one of the founding buildings of this community, and build a library behind it. And I don't think libraries necessarily need to be one floor, because you can have meeting rooms and even a theater if you have a second or a third floor built into that, which could be extremely useful. The current library, just as is the basement of the church, because I teach adult education classes in both those places, they are tombs. They are absolute tombs. But the current library could certainly be a community center for Surrey, for children's welfare, for adults, for senior citizens, for adults, and for the high school students, because in all reality, the high school students, when they go to the library, they're not necessarily going to the library to go to the library. It's a meeting place. So you give them a meeting place, which is between the schools. So we can have both things. What I would not like to see is that the library end up at the reserve, where everything else seems to be moving to. Because what other open space is there?
To clarify, that's not on the table. I don't want anybody to have any.
That is not a possibility.
Okay, well, fine. But we can still make perfectly good use of the current building, because unless you bought up the rest of the block there and demolished everything.
That's also not on the table.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm saying unless you did. It's pointless. As you said, you're just Band-Aiding that building. I mean, I know that library as a child when it was the bank. But again, if we look at saving the facade of the Brookline School, an historic building, we have a wonderful building put behind it, we have green space behind that, and we take the current library and make it a good community center for Surrey, for senior citizens, for children, and for students. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not going to read my treatise that I emailed you, I promise. But I do want to make a few comments about historic preservation in this township, just building on what Tony, Mr. Morinelli said. I feel like just in my short 16 years here, I've seen a lot of buildings come down that are very beautiful, and once they're gone, they're gone. This is an integral part of our neighborhood, an integral part of our community. It's solidly built. I mean, if you've seen that foundation, it is thick walls. This thing's not going to come down easily. It's also designed by a prominent local architect, which I don't know if everybody knows, but he was David Knickerbocker Boyd, and he was one of a group of young Philadelphia architects that included William Price and Horace Trumbauer, common names in this area. He was called one of her favorites by the Lower Merion Conservancy's Director of Historic Preservation, and I think it might be well worth your while to meet with her and meet with the Lower Merion Township Historic Preservation Planner, Greg Pritchard, because he's somewhat of an expert on Boyd. This is an important building right here in our community. His work included residences in Marion, Bryn Mawr, Ardmore, Radnor. He did design the Saturday Club in Wayne, the Central Baptist Church. He designed the Wayne Hotel, which is on the National Register of Historic Places, and his firm designed the Haverford Middle School and the Oakmont School. I think there are ways that this large space could really function as a future community space with plenty of parking. There's classrooms, hallways, all those things are really easy things to retrofit on the inside, whether it's just the facade or the full building. I mean, Ludington is more than one story, so you can't tell me all libraries have to be one story. And also, really importantly, I think just environmentally, the greenest building is one that's already built. So why don't we take advantage of this beautiful building that we have in our community? As one of my neighbors so aptly put it, if we wanted to live amongst new construction and, stucco and stone veneer, we would move out to Exton or something. This is why we choose this area. We want to live in a community that values its historic resources. All the other townships in our area seem to value them more than we do. So why don't we try to take a look at preserving this and using it for whatever community resource might be appropriate. Thank you.
Susanna Baruco. the woman before me said pretty much everything I wanted to say, but I'll only add that I think we do have to consider, I hope that I haven't heard from the commissioners tonight that we're not even going to consider the adaptive reuse of the Brookline School. As it's been pointed out, even the current library, which many people seem to be extremely attached to, was an adaptive reuse, and it may be out of date now, but it's been in use for a long time. So the fact that it's out of date is really no strike against it. It's been used for quite some time. And to say that also, I think the sustainable design issue and the fact that the interior is probably, I mean, schools are one of the easiest building types to be adaptively reused. There's no reason that a building for the 20th century and beyond cannot be inserted into a historic building. It happens all the time. I can't tell you how many tech companies have put their headquarters into historic buildings because they're cool. So there's no reason why we can't consider that for our township, and I hope that not every commissioner is going to come up here and tell. I find it a little disconcerting when commissioners come up here and say that they've already made up their mind about this when other commissioners tell the township residents that it's all still being considered, and I hope that the latter is the case, and I appreciate you guys having this meeting tonight and entertaining our comments. Thanks.
Sure. Just real quick before you go, and I know you're waiting. I for one have repeated numerous times that when we vote, it will be based on all the information. But I also, without disagreeing with anything Colette or Susanna said, and I know them both and I respect their opinions and I take them very seriously, but we also have to deal with sort of the issues that we are dealing with. And the reality is that Brookline School is not on our historic registry. There's a number of buildings that are on the historic registry, and that's not. And I understand the arguments to why maybe you believe it should be, but it's not on as it currently exists. And
School district buildings are.
I think it's unfair to say that.
None of the school district buildings.
When that registry was recorded, Brookline School was not an 100-year-old building. Now it is.
I don't think it's fair to stand behind that. And don't ask me to bring up the Powell House, because that's also on the register a lot earlier than the Brookline School. And while we keep putting a tarp on it,
all I'm saying is that
we're not looking at any options for that building either. So
respectfully, though,
Yeah.
if you want to say that you believe it's historic, that's fine, but it's also not on the historic registry now. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
Number two,
I'm sorry.
all I'm
sorry.
saying, I've respected your opinion. I'm just making sure everybody, because we're talking to a broader audience now, both here and on camera, and everybody's calling it historic, but we don't have any historic designation based on the.
Very subjective.
I'm just going to,
It's
I'm sorry, just one comment. A quarter of the buildings, because I counted, on the the township's historic inventory, are newer than the 1913 Brookline School, first of all. Second of all, there is, like, the Oakmont School isn't on there, the old Chestnut School is not on there, the old Manoa School. So obviously the school district probably pulled, and that can happen, I don't know, I
You're
tried to
absolutely
do research on that, but probably pulled a lot of school district buildings off of that inventory for a reason. They wanted that versatility or
the
that.
property owners at the time the registry was made were given the option of
Exactly.
pulling themselves off. And
That
when that happened, I was in high school, so I don't know
I
what the
know,
school
me- yeah,
district did.
yeah.
Okay, but let me.
I'm just saying,
if I
it
could just
doesn't
if I
really
could just
mean,
finish.
it doesn't mean it's not historic.
All I'm saying is that what we're deciding tonight, or in deciding with that building, we're not deciding whether to put it on the historic registry. That's all I'm saying.
I understand
You
that.
could say it's subjective, and it is subjective how people get on that list, but there is a list. And that building is not on it as it's currently construed. That's all I'm saying.
But a lot of the buildings that this architect
If you-
designed are on even national
You can
lists.
push to get it on. Anyway, the second point is, though, at various points, we talked about whether we value historic buildings or not. And I can tell you that we talked about tax money before. This board has spent a couple $1 million over the last 4 years on the Granger Street Federal School and Nighter Hall. I mean, it's not like there has not been money spent. That's real money.
Well, if I may, Before we take more discussion about the Brookline School and all of that, I'm the fourth ward, and I know I have a couple residents here, and you may have fourth ward questions, you may have seventh or eighth ward, third or eighth ward questions that are other than that, and we do have reasonable time limits. So I would like to ask that we sort of put that on the side for a moment. We're not going to be deciding the Brookline School tonight anyway. So if anyone has questions other than, yeah, you can go because you've been patient. But after this woman, if we could, if people have questions about other issues, I don't want you to feel as though you're not welcome to speak them or that we are simply putting everything in one bucket or topic. So after you, I'd like to give other topics an opportunity, and then we can go back once we're done those.
This has nothing to do with the library, so I'm going to change the subject.
Okay.
I am a Fourth Ward resident. I live on Woodcroft Road. My name's Sierra Murphy. I emailed you just last week. We have a situation, a traffic situation on our block. We have 36 children living on the street, and the cars just, fly. Tractor trailers on the back of them are just really flying down the road. We're really concerned. Last year, a child was hit by a car. He was okay, thank God. But it's really a situation, and we're really concerned about it.
To address that for this meeting.
Yes, thank you so much. So I did receive a petition from Mr. Siegel as to how we could maybe talk about speed bumps or a do not enter, or we just want to look at options on how we can kind of just slow it down.
Well, to address the do not enter signs, you have to do, if you are successful to get a do not enter sign, that applies to all the residents also. So everybody has to drive around to get a different way there. And we are limited to what we can do off of the state highway, just so you know that. So there are limitations to what we can do.
Okay.
As far as speed bumps are concerned, the speed bumps that we have installed, very recently are temporary speed bumps because of the bridge construction.
Yes.
They are due to be taken up sometime in the next month or so because when it snows, the township cannot plow.
Okay.
They are temporary, they're bolted to the ground and the plows will just tear them up. So to put them in now it really is useless because by the time we get it going, they'll be coming right back up again.
So you can't put them in?
We're not putting
because of
any,
plowing.
well, I won't say we're not, but because of the weather limitations, the temporary ones that are installed presently will be coming up by December because they have to come up for snow removal.
Okay, so what do we do about
Well, we
this?
did a speed study at the commissioner's request, and I'll let the deputy chief interpret that, so.
As a result of the speed study, what it showed was there's an average of 727 cars coming down the street per day. And a lot of that may be cut through because traffic is getting backed up on Darby Road.
It's a beautiful street,
in
is
both
what I get all the
directions.
time, which is lovely.
And the average speed of each car coming down the street was 28 miles per hour.
Okay.
The speed limit is 25 on the street. So in order for us to do enforcement, we have to give cars, because the state won't allow us to do radar, we have to give them 10, not 5. So when we look at the traffic study, what it says is the enforcement would be 2.8% of the cars coming down the street. So in order to give the cars the 10 miles per hour that the state mandates local police to do, since we're not allowed to use radar, we would probably not be able to enforce any speeding on your street.
Not saying we wouldn't have a presence. So I don't want you to feel like we're hanging you out to dry, because we're not. We understand. The volume is the biggest thing that we find when we do these speed studies. Yeah, you have a lot of cars that go down your street. It's a residential street. But because of the bridge, I'm sure it has increased considerably. I don't think we did a study before the bridge. I'm not sure.
There was a study done, and this is my neighbor, Jeff Potter. I'm not exactly sure when. I'm new to the street,
Okay.
but I'm watching it
Well,
happen.
we can look at that. We'll have it on record, so we save them.
Okay, and where it was put up right off of Darby, so it was like maybe 3 houses in. By the time they get down to the end of Woodcross,
Are you talking the older one or the new study?
the older one,
Okay.
yeah, and they're flying.
Okay, understood.
Gain speed when they get to us.
Because I saw Sergeant Bedrosian setting it up, and it was in the middle of the block. I know that's probably that one.
Yes.
So what we do is, so you know what the speed study, what we do is there's a black box that goes up on the pole, looks like a little Pelican suitcase. What that does is actually counts cars and also gives you speeds of each car coming down the street.
And the times of the day when the speeds are
So-
volume and all that.
We usually leave them up for like a 10-day period so we can get a true reflection, not only just weekends, but on, during the week. So, and usually the majority of your cars are during the week if you look at the traffic study. And the problem is because of the congestion on Darby Road, people are looking for the out to get off of Darby Road. We all do it. It's all your neighbors, it's all of us. So what we will do, we'll increase enforcement on your street, see if we can get some compliance. We have radar signs that tell you how fast you're going. We'll put those signs up first to see if we can get some compliance, and then we'll work with you. You can look up my email, and you can email me, and I'll walk you through the process if you want. There are permanent speed humps. We would have to make sure everything complies. You have to get signatures and stuff like that. But that's an option that you can look at. But we can walk you through that process, and we'll try to help you and get
I do have
compliance
the
with.
paperwork for
Right,
that.
and the
I
front
think we have
page-
a lot of support for that.
Just in general, for people who, we get a lot of requests for speed humps, speed bumps, et cetera. There's actually an entire set of regulations relating to those, and if you really want to get bored, you can look at the PennDOT Speed Calming Control Manual, which is 100 pages or more. But the bottom line is there are specific requirements in terms of volume of street, number of driveways, number of cars minimum, and we can't do anything on state roads. So the front page of that, if anyone wants to see it, tells you exactly what are the minimum requirements, plus 80% of the residents have to sign it. So it's a significant obstacle. And then we haven't had them installed in the fourth ward, but I know anecdotally from other wards, most of the time the people don't like them because of the noise, which is separate. But there are very specific requirements as to those. And purposely, I worked with the police to design that petition so people could actually see what the requirements are in advance, because there are some streets where you just read it and you say, well, it can't apply because either the length of the street
That's my
or other
concern,
thing.
1,000
And
feet.
that the police can tell you. I don't know the length of, your street's probably one of the prettiest streets in this township. But
Is
it's
everybody driving down it?
tree lined, it's a beautiful street.
We love it.
But Woodcroft,
Woodcroft Road.
Woodcroft.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Right, just get in
I'll
touch,
be
get in touch with me, and I'll walk you through everything.
Thank you
All
so
right?
much. Much appreciated.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
I haven't heard anything in the past few weeks about the attempted abductions. Has there been anything recent, and/or has there been any leads in the older
Well,
ones?
we're calling them luring, not attempted abductions. There's been
Okay.
no overture to, grabbing the child, so that they are luring incidents. We have nothing further on it. We've have sightings, many sightings from residents from the information we put out, and we have identified some people who are not, we feel are not the suspects involved. But we haven't had anything since the initial three of them, yes.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm just curious who I contact. My dad took a lot of pictures of stop signs right around Chatham Park School that are completely faded, and you can barely, you can tell they're stop signs, but they're not red anymore.
We're working on that, and I'll let
Okay.
Dan Mariani.
Here's my business card. They're very efficient. They just did some in the fourth ward this week.
There's a lot of the stop signs are very old, and we are replacing them, so.
In the last township election cycle, there was a lot of conversation about the township not having a workable, comprehensive plan, and there was conversation about how good it would be to have one. Can we have an update on the comprehensive plan?
Yes, we have hired a facilitator. We had our first meeting about a month ago. We have another meeting Monday night. This will probably take about 15 months. There will be multiple opportunities for resident involvement. There'll be open meetings. They're going to send out, I think, both on via email and mailings for residents seeking their input on issues and what they would like to see the township. So, yeah, we're moving forward. And I don't think it will be completed by the end of 2020, but probably early 2021. And just in preparing for the comprehensive plan update, we looked at the last one, which was in the late 1980s, at which time the comment on the library was it was a beautiful structure without enough parking. So things have not changed.
My name is Peter Lunny. I live at Brookline Boulevard. I just wanted to find out what's happening about this guy running a rental hall right next to me with no parking whatsoever. It is a nightmare to come home, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 9:30. You can't even park in front of your own house. It's ridiculous. There was a policeman that came over last week, tried to get all the cars that were double parked out from in front of the church, and he actually left because he couldn't do anything. I mean, this is a nightmare. I watched 8 kids run across the street in the dark between the cars with all the cars double parked. What are we going to wait for? Somebody get killed in that corner?
You're talking Annunciation or another
I'm
church?
talking about Temple Lutheran.
Temple Lutheran, okay.
They have no parking, but they're running a rental hall completely. Every night, every Saturday, every Sunday. We tolerate the daycare. We know that's during the day that's going to happen. But we're talking nights now. We can't even live in this neighborhood. Getting tired of it.
We could talk to the pastor and
Yeah, I have had conversations with them. I'm going to try to set up a meeting with the neighborhood. There's some of the things that meet at night, we have a drug epidemic in this township. One of the things that meets there is our NA meetings. It's hard for me to tell them not to have those meetings. I totally agree with the double parking. I went by the night.
Well, now we have several groups of cheerleaders. We've got, it is a rental hall. If I was to do that in my house, you guys would be down on me saying you can't do that because you don't have sufficient parking. Why can't it be done to them?
there's zoning issues that I'm not aware of, so I think I'll have to rely on somebody else to give me that answer. But we'll enforce parking down there. We will, I promise you we will.
I'm telling you, the one guy tried, and he left because he couldn't do anything. One of the cars that was double parked, he told him he had to move. You know where he moved? Across my driveway. Yeah.
Oh, I know you.
Do you know what night that was? That way the
That was a
chief can, the
Tuesday
chief
night.
can look it up.
Is it every night something going on down there? It is, right?
Almost every night,
Yeah.
yes.
But they're, they're making U-turns
Yeah, I wonder.
constantly.
Yeah.
Kids are flying across that street. Somebody is gonna get hurt. I'm telling you.
And you can talk to the guy, he doesn't care. He's not part of the neighborhood. He's not.
Jerry, you want to set up, we can go down and talk to you and I, and we'll kind of lay down the law, and then we'll enforce, I promise you we will. We'll do our best to get it moving, and Commissioner and I will, and the Deputy Chief will go down and talk to him.
Because, I mean, there's somebody gonna get killed. in
But
that
we
corner.
don't disagree with you on that. You're welcome.
I just moved to Brookline. I grew up in Haverford Town. I live right across the street from him, 3 doors down from where I grew up. Same thing with the church issue. I mean, they're out there until 10 o'clock every single night. I mean, blaring music, I don't have a driveway. So if I come home at 9:30 at night, I should be able to park out front of my house. And that's,
Well, I agree with you, the parking is an issue, but the streets are open to anybody.
And I get
Yeah.
that. But then it's like, if he does want to rent out his hall, why doesn't he park at that Brookline school?
Well, Brookline.
And then they have to walk a
I
lot.
don't know what zoning is in or what's allowed, so somebody else have to answer that question for me. We'll enforce the parking part, but what's going on inside the building, it doesn't.
No. I'm saying that parking lot at Brookline School, behind the Brookline School.
I don't think the commissioners want to advertise that as free parking for another facility. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially at the moment, we're not sure what we're going to be doing with the Brookline School. We're not trying to open that up for parking. I think we will meet with with the pastor. And again, it's a church in the community. Most of
And
the
I get
churches in the
that.
community to have events, and so it's,
And I agree with the NA meetings. We do have a huge drug epidemic right now. 100% for the meetings there. That's fine. But when, like you said, you don't want to advertise free parking at Brookline School, but that's an open lot right now. So why can't they park there and then walk a block to their meetings?
I can't answer that.
I mean,
They park on Sundays, they park at night, they park when they have their NA meetings.
it's like, it's just crazy.
Just as far as the uses permitted there, be happy to look into what they've been granted to have as accessory uses. Can't say what they are off the top of my head. I'm certain daycare is one of them that goes for every church in the township. As far as what they're using the church itself for at night, I'd have to look into it, but certainly it's possible that they are, exceeding the uses permitted there. So we could all look at it.
Okay, when Pete and my granddaughter talked about what it's like on Brookline Boulevard, you can't even imagine. If I had somebody to come over to visit me on any night during the week, they would have to park. I live at 516 right across from the church. They would have to park at Edgewood. There's no parking, there's double parking, they park in front of the driveways. We've gone to them, and I try to talk to them. I've said, I don't want to go behind your back, but people are really getting angry. The noise that goes on till 10 and 11 at night, okay, we have the meetings, good. That's great, but nobody's from around here. They're riding up on motorcycles, they stand there, people have to walk. I've watched them. People will be walking down the street. They don't move off the sidewalk. Our people from the neighborhood have to walk out to the street. These people, they're not courteous or anything. And the thing is, they're there like two or three nights a week. Fine, everybody needs help, but there has to be an end to sometime. They have to leave. They can't stay there and talk and hang out with their radios blaring. It's really a nuisance, and yes, like anybody that lives right there, it's horrible. And then with the parking, it's incredible, and they are so rude. And John, right at where it says no U-turn, my granddaughter's all but a hit. I'm gonna lowball it 3 to 4 times. They turn right between, there's 2 cars parked on both sides of the street, and then they just turn right there by the light. It's horrible. So, don't mean to complain, but it's terrible, and that's not what we move into. We knew there was a daycare, we knew there was a church, we're very courteous to the church with our parking on Sunday. Yeah, well, I knew I moved in across from daycare, but I didn't move into everybody having these meetings every single night. And the last pastor, Matt, we worked things out, and he was great, but this is every single night. We're sorry they don't have enough people, but they need to do something else. We have to live there too. And it's our community too. But it's 7 days a week now, and nights. That's horrible. Saturday, Sunday, they rent it out too. Horrible.
I just want to say, the couple that was up here on Woodcroft Road, talking about the traffic, I live across the street from the Brookline School on Sagamore Road, and that scares me, that hearing her talk about cross-traffic and everything, and then you talk about putting a library in that will have 80 parking spots into that spot, into in the middle of a neighborhood. I just feel like that would be so unsafe, and we're just creating more problems there. The other thing is, are you looking into other options other than the library? It seems like this is just a single stream thought process for you. And that decisions have already been made even, I know you say decisions haven't been made. Excuse me?
Location?
At that location.
Yeah, the other alternative, when we got it from the school district, we agreed that it would be a public use, so the concept.
But you're not looking into anything other than the library? There's
in
no
terms
other.
of, I mean, the township, we don't have any other.
Well,
A park would be.
this one woman talked
That's what I
about a
mean. The
senior
park
center.
is the other use, but I mean, we don't have.
Investigation and what that would cost and what that.
Well,
Yes, that's part of the cost estimates that we're getting, but there's.
You're getting a park estimate to put a park there?
Right, so as part of the estimates that we're getting, these options are being presented to us.
and when we,
Not a
'Cause
library.
we're hearing it's just a library that's giving
No.
you
what we
options.
have said,
and that's what, I mean, there's all these rumors. I've been trying to, there's no secret plan. There's no, honestly,
hasn't been presented at all
Okay.
to us.
But
It really
what-
hasn't.
What has been presented from the
Is that you
moment we
want a
announced
library
this,
there.
if you would.
That's what's been
I understand, but if you'd allow me to finish. What we have said all along, we discussed with the school district, what was discussed with the property committee was that location, the Brookline School as it is not going to, we have no plan to use it for anything else. It would either be demolished and the entire area used as a park, playground, that type of facility, or we would build a library there if that was the sentiment. And that's what we have said. There's no other considerations that we're making at this time.
If you go to the meeting on YouTube last January and February, we talked about this. When we got the property from the school district, the idea was we'll look at it for a library or it'll become a park. Like there's no.
But is there,
that's what we're trying to do right now.
That's
That's
what
what
we've
we're waiting
stopped
for.
since May and June when we heard everybody and we're getting the cost analysis that we're waiting for
On the
in
park.
December on everything.
okay, because that isn't presented at all. It's only talking about the cost analysis of the library.
Park is minimal. It's the demolition cost. So parks are, to create a
Well,
park.
actually, let me just correct that. I mean, I don't think we haven't talked to the parks. We need to make a decision on the building, whether it comes down. And if it's coming down, it would become a park. We have not had an extensive conversation with the Parks Department about what we would do with that, but the cost of the park would obviously be significantly less than if we either renovated the building or put in a building there. So it's always been in one of the considerations would be to make it a park.
And it would be considered, I mean, putting 80 parking spots into that area, into in the middle of a neighborhood.
But I think, you know,
would look
one of
into
the things,
traffic patterns and
can I,
such.
this process has moved at a glacial pace, okay? I mean, well, maybe with global warming that may be going faster. I expected that we would have, by this time, these estimates. We don't, okay? And I think it's only fair to the library, to this whole process, before we say that we want this, we don't want that, to wait for the information to come out. I mean, I do want to hear from, you know, I understand your concerns about parking. The library has had some type of plan of, and we're very aware of trying to not impact the neighborhood. So I think we need to wait for that to come out. I can say, again, there may be a couple of members on the board who feel strongly one way or the other. I would say, I know for myself, I don't know how I would vote on this. I do want to get more information. I think the majority of the board is in the same position, that we're waiting for an analysis, and then based on that analysis, more public comment, and then make a vote.
And once that information is out, there'll be ample time for meetings, public meetings.
Right,
before
and
you
that's
make the
what I
decision.
said. There'll be public meeting, general public meetings, and I would have a specific meeting for the
With our
people
board.
in the ultimate, right in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear on the cost estimates that are being obtained. So there's going to be a cost estimate to demolish, right? So that's one cost estimate we're
Yep.
getting, right? A cost estimate to build a new library there, a cost estimate to rehab the existing space. And I think it's all very obvious to everyone mathematically that a park would be substantially less costly, but we are not getting the price of the cost of a park. And the reason I'm being very specific is because I think that when your constituents want to give each of you individual feedback about what they believe they would want to support, I think like we're just gonna go round about like, oh, well, yeah, it'll obviously be less, but I think to some constituents, particularly those that may not have a lot of bandwidth to afford it, I think that we need to be clear on what the cost of the park would be. If it's a $1 million park, some people may say, well, gee, I'd rather spend whatever for the library. So I'm not clear. We're not getting a cost for a park?
At this point, we're not getting a cost for the park.
Okay.
So
I guess
The decision, we're getting the cost to whether to take down the building or not, right? And then based on that decision and the decision with the library, then we make a decision as to what to do with that space. So if the decision is made to renovate the existing library, then we would make the decision as to what to do with that Brookline site, right?
Okay.
Like that,
So, I guess-
part of this, part of the difficulty in all this is we're, to be open and allow everybody to comment on it, we can't make a decision for something that requires a first step.
So I guess my last question is there, if the library were to move, are there thoughts about what and who gets to make the decision about what would happen to the existing library space?
The property committee would, as we're unfortunately waiting on to do with the township building, we would then review it, determine what the best options are for the property, whether it's township use, whether it's turning it back into productive tax-paying use, and then we'd make a recommendation. But the library decision, I appreciate the analogy of glaciers, but it's now been a decade for me on it, and we need to make that decision. Everything else hinges on what we do with the library. It really has to, because there's the costs of that. I mean, if you merely renovated that building and then put in the $10 million that's the estimate to do the renovations for the library, that may put us in a position where we couldn't afford to do both. I mean, we have to evaluate all of those numbers and options, and we'll have them shortly. From my perspective, not soon enough. I would have liked them. I had anticipated that the board would have voted in October, but powers beyond my control, shall we say, have delayed that at this point yet again. You know, we voted years ago to renovate the library. That had to be put off for certain considerations. Then we found out with the school district. This seems like a process that will never end. But then again, I never thought I'd live to see the Blue Route helped, improved, and then today we find that. So maybe there really is a God and a hope.
Sorry. Good evening. Thanks for having this out here, and thanks for everybody bringing up their points. Everything's pretty valid here. But I think it's important for you guys to convey to the rest of the commissioners and everybody here that it is imperative for the township to work hand in hand with the community. I don't think that's happened so far on this project. Really, this project really hopefully can be on our terms. We're the ones that have to deal with this day in and day out. I just, with someone who lives across the street, I don't feel like, I feel kind of like, I just have a bad taste in my mouth about the whole situation. I mean, we could put the best library in town there, but the way this has gone about is leaving a bad taste in, I think, a lot of the neighborhood's mouths. We're the ones that need to live with the outcome of what goes on in this area. I also think that the board needs to be honest with itself and its constituents about the costs. We need to be realistic with expectations of any proposed project, and if the cost will be worth the end product. Does this financially and civically benefit the township, the people of this township? I think what it seems to be is that that there's been this whole push for a library without any cost. It just seems a little bit negligent to me for people in power in the township to be putting out this whole idea of building a new library where we don't have any cost about any studies. I would feel like you would want to present all the facts first and then allow the township with those facts to have been able to make up their mind and open a public forum rather than, having all these meetings, everyone's here voicing their opinions and everyone has valid opinions. But like if you brought the facts forward up front, I think this process would have been a lot smoother, a lot cleaner if we had these facts up front as to costs, timeframes, and things like that. And I think that's kind of what, at least I think myself and a lot of people in the neighborhood are really upset about. Is just kind of like, there's this full push for this library.
Can I ask you honestly?
Yeah.
And I respect your opinion. You've now been at 4 meetings. I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
I understand what's going on.
Yeah.
But if we, as a board, before presenting this to you, just said, these are the numbers, we went out and got these bids, wouldn't that have been the opposite of what you're saying?
No, because it would have been. But the way this is coming across is like, oh, we're putting a library in there. That's the way it's coming across. It's not coming across. Yeah.
Discussed this library, and it was public meetings and so forth.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the school district decided they didn't want to pay for this building anymore, that they wanted to donate it to the township. And that threw a whole boomerang into the previous library's process.
Yeah.
This has been going on, and it got roadblocked because doing anything behind the scenes.
I'm not saying they're doing anything behind the scenes, ma'am.
They're trying to get the numbers he just finished telling you. He's trying to get the numbers.
But why is it?
Listening?
I am listening, ma'am. I'm just saying, like, as someone who lives directly across the street from the building.
Right.
And I get what you're saying.
I'm with you, but I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that we've now since, last January and May, we're now getting the numbers, and we continually keep presenting it to hear everybody's opinion.
Okay.
And I understand that Mr. McGarity has come up and given his opinion, and for the life, I fully understand that Commissioner Holmes at a meeting gave his opinion, and Commissioner Siegel gave his opinion, and people have their own opinions, but we're presenting all the evidence. When we get these numbers, we're going to present it to the board, and you're going to have every opportunity to come up and tell us your view, because you live across the street again, and Commissioner Hart's going to have a meeting with everybody on Sagamore and Kenmore. There's no secret motivation here. There really isn't.
Okay. But like I said, do you see like it's not coming off that way, though?
But we haven't voted on anything.
No, I know, but
Right?
I guess it's but it's just not coming off that way, and that's.
I have personally, over the last few years, made 8 presentations specifically relating to this building, the library, community facilities, starting with when I first joined this board and made presentations about the unbelievable conditions that the police toiled in. We have made presentations after presentation about everything. This board, whatever disagreements we have philosophically, has been remarkably transparent. And while Commissioner McGarity and I don't agree on a lot, he's always said that. We've been transparent. But we are at a process now where we have to get numbers. Until we get numbers, anything else we say, we are simply going around in circles, which is what we're doing. And we're working to get the numbers. I want them sooner. I want this issue resolved. As chair of the property committee, yes, I make no bones about it. I want a new library. Do I know if we can afford it at the Brookline School? No. What I do know is that we are taking the library and treating it wrongly. They are a library that has been trying to plan for renovations for almost 20 years, well before I was on this board. And the library issue continues to block our ability not only to deal with the library, but to deal with the future of the property of the former township building, to determine if we move the library, what to do with that. And it is a domino effect that is stalled. We need to be able to move forward. People want to hear about the, economic development plans and all of those things. Well, the library decision is central to so many locations within this township that we need to make a decision. I work in a business where things get done and we have deadlines. Government moves at a snail's pace too often. Look at the Blue Route, look at other things. I mean, the fact that we're getting Eagle Road repaved is in itself a miracle. And the library, though, seems to be the one issue in this township that just can't get done. And we need it, the community needs it, and believe me, I want the information out there so we can finally vote, make a decision, and move on. Unfortunately, we're not going to have that for more time, and trust me, I think you can hear it in my voice. I want that decision done, whatever it is. I wasn't thrilled when we didn't put the library here. We lived with those decisions. I lived with it. But we need information, and unfortunately that is taking time. And I was on the phone today with the township engineer about it, and he certainly knows my views, but he can only do so much. He's working with architects that aren't in his company. He's doing what he can. I know the new township manager is, because it's now on his plate, and it was actually on the township manager before him's plate. So we want it done, trust me.
All right, well, thank you for the time.
Hello. I view our commissioners as the luminaries or the visionaries of the township. And you have big titles and you have a good deal of responsibility. And what I don't understand is why I haven't heard from you about adaptive repurposing of the Brookline School. It's either the library or it gets demolished. And if I'm correct, you have no plan beyond that. And that's something that constituents expect from you, to say, this is where the future is. In the next 30 years, we have an aging population, and we have babies. We have a lot of babies being born, and they need daycare. And you eliminated 2 needs in our community by closing the Brookline School. Or the school district, whatever. But there are needs in this community. I realize you're not the school district. I know that, and I know you're not in the daycare business, despite the fact that the CREC has Little Explorers, which is a daycare, and that is from the township. So you do actually do it when it's convenient. And I think that those 2 needs, when they were eliminated, just were eliminated. And I would like to hear that another option is being considered, that if the library doesn't go there, that the Brookline School maybe isn't going to be demolished, but it will be adaptively repurposed to accommodate the aging population and the expanding children needs. And is that a possibility? And also the historical adaptation of has that fallen on deaf ears? I mean, people come, this is my 5th meeting, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, and it's always the same contentious library issue. But you're supposed to be broader and thinking like, what's in 50 years? What's in 30 years? What are we gonna do with this building?
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out, but I would say here's the problem, that if we renovate the library at its current site, while it will be less expensive than building a new library, it's a significant sum of money. I'm not sure that at this point we would have enough money to do that renovation and also do a renovation of the Brookline School. I'm pretty sure that we would not have enough to do it. So it would mean that the Brookline School would sit empty for some period of time until we would perhaps
I mean, Surrey already offered to work with the,
Surrey's not offering to pay any of the money, and we've heard from many people about the tax issues. Part of this whole thing is that it costs money, and we don't have a use for that building right now. We just don't have one that is financially responsible.
There were things, vibrant life was going on in that building.
The school district could not afford to keep that building anymore and provide the services to the students, and the township doesn't have another use that we're currently using that we need that space for. So if we don't have it, it's irresponsible to Mrs. Kane and all the other people who are paying taxes in this town for us to spend all that money for something we don't have a use for, to be a landlord. We can't spend money to be a landlord. I'm sorry, we have taxpayers all over this town, and they don't want us to spend money to be a landlord.
I don't see it as being a landlord. I see it as serving the needs of the community, and if your needs of the needs of the constituents are changing, then you provide services for them. And if the facility is there that can do it and exists, yes, it needs to be brought up to code. Interest rates are low. So then, I mean, this building was financed. I mean, there are ways to think about it down the road, and that's what commissioners do, and they need to look at the broad picture. And how are the needs of the community changing? I don't know that specifically. You have more of the demographic details than we have in our individual districts. But you have to look at what is happening in the community and what are the needs that need to be met. And if the library is the only thing in a park, then you should say that and then see if that's what everyone agrees with.
I'm sorry to change the subject, I think. I just had a question about the storm drains in the township. I think Commissioner Siegel had in one of his newsletters something about when you see a storm drain, I'm concerned with all the rain we've been having. I've been seeing a lot of storm drains that are caked with leaves. And we report them somewhere is there some way of doing that? Hi.
But, yeah, you can always call, and the Public Works Department will handle that. Yeah.
Hi, Patty Lee Quinn, Brookline Boulevard. I just want to echo the sentiments of some of the people who just spoke. What concerns me, what worries me and disturbs me about this, I thought we were getting cost figures for several options. I thought we were looking at costs for green space or a park, of renovating the Brookline School and of the library. So I honestly thought, and I do think it would be fair if we had several options to evaluate and compare. And it seems to me the whole focus is on the library. And I want to know, did we definitely decide on a new library or renovating a library? Was that decision made at all? Okay.
No, there's
Okay,
been no
good.
decision made on that.
Okay. So is it possible to get ballpark estimates for park, green space, or for renovation, so we'd be able to compare possibilities?
We could get, I mean, again, the cost is going to be significantly less, and if a lot of people would have different ideas of what they want to go in the park, so that would, and I think making it, we've committed to the park that's there, stays there. If the building comes down and we're not going to do anything else with it, we would, the whole space would be a park. I think the major cost at that point would be the demolition of the building, which we are getting a cost estimate on. I think if we make it's a simpler decision, or could reassess what we want there if it's going to be a bigger park at a later time. Just cost is going to be so significantly less than building a building there, and I don't know that the cost estimates help. I mean, it's not. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But there's no decisions on it. We're getting cost estimates on a renovation at the library, this current site, at moving the library to the Brookline, a new library at the Brookline, and on demolition of the building.
Okay. So again, I feel like the library, the issue of the library is driving the whole project, as opposed to the issue of the space and the Brookline building. So I feel like things are slanted there. It's my feeling.
Well,
But thank you for
Mrs.
listening. Thank you for having this forum. Appreciate that very much.
I mean, just to go back, though, to how it started, I mean, the library is driving it because we didn't have property, and we took the property to keep it from being sold to a private developer of some kind, and to consider it for use for the library. So that's why it was taken, to consider it and to keep it in the public space. So saying that the library is driving it, I think that's probably true. The library is also driving what's happening with the old township building that we're using as a glorified parking lot right now, because it's on hold until we figure out what we're doing with the library. So I think that's accurate. I think that's that's a decision that needs to be made, and then next steps.
But Kevin, do you think that everybody's weighed in on what they want to do
About the
regarding a library, regarding how much money they do wish to spend, or what kind of tax increase they're willing to?
I think we've heard from a lot of people, and that's why we'll get the estimates that hopefully will be ready by December. And there'll be another opportunity for everybody to weigh in once they have those estimates.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You got, Chris, we're getting taped, so you need to come up.
And it is, we do have staff here, so we will be ending, it's 5 of 9, so we'll take after Mr. Connell if there's one more comment, and then we'll wrap up.
Just a quick comment on the landlord business. I know we don't want to be in the landlord business, but we are, because the library is a separate entity of the township, and the township owns the building, so the tenant is the library. So that is a landlord.
Okay.
That's the way I see it. I mean,
libraries have been government functions for a long time.
But it's separate unto
I'm with you.
itself. Yeah.
It's another semi-government entity.
So
we can, if you,
But it's not.
I would be happy to, at this point.
So when they go, if they were to go to build a new building in wherever in Haverford Township, who would own the building?
It's
If
a
they're going to
library?
build a library in Haverford Township,
Right.
who would own the building?
Haverford Township.
Township will own the building if we build it.
And who would be in the building?
The library.
The library. And they are a nonprofit organization, a separate entity of the township.
Yes.
Would they not be a tenant then?
Sure.
So we
In a
are.
literal sense, but they
Landlord.
don't pay us
So we
rent.
do, but we do do it. though.
Sure, we're in the landlord business, and we can put it to the rest of the township if they want us to build a building for Surrey and a daycare.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you for having this meeting tonight. I very much appreciate getting up to speed on what's going on in the township and in our wards. I had 3 questions. And forgive me, I very much appreciate all the options that the township is exploring with regard to the library project. Although it may or may not have been explored previously, I was wondering if the township would consider exploring other options for additional parking at the current library site, in addition to all the other things you're exploring? Because that seems to be the largest challenge we have with the existing location.
I think as part of these estimates, that's going to be included.
I think that that's extremely important, you know, even if it meant something that maybe wouldn't be a normal consideration, but to try to think a little outside the box to see if it was
It is being
a
looked at.
feasible option. And then I wanted to know, someone shared with me that the township is looking into obtaining a $20 million bond for the library if a new library is to be constructed. Is that correct?
We can't make that determination until we know what we would be building and at what cost. So we've made no determinations. We know we will need a bond. but
Okay, but
we
the
certainly
township
haven't-
isn't actively applying for that at this time.
We couldn't, we would first have to pass what's called an intent resolution, and then we have to go through all of the other hoops, and we certainly haven't engaged bond counsel or anyone else
Okay, I
to advise
appreciate
us, as Ms. Cuthbertson is saying, but no,
Thank you.
but
No, that
it would
was-
be paid for with borrowed money, a bond, just as we did for this building, or this building was multiple bonds, and that's what would likely happen, depending on the cost. We typically don't borrow more than $10 million in any cycle because of a variety of reasons.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then going back to what my fellow resident was mentioning with regard to adaptive reuse options for the Brookline School, in the chance that it was determined that it was going to cost $20 million to build a new building on that site, if the township was going to move forward with spending that money, would it possibly be a consideration, and it was going to be $10 million to renovate the existing library? If we were to explore a possibility of taking the $20 million, we would then have, if that was the path the township was going to go on, we would then have an opportunity to adaptively reuse the Brookline School for other, what is referred to as public uses, namely for the senior citizens and the childcare needs of the township, in addition to doing the renovations for the library, correct? Is a possible scenario. I know that the township doesn't want to be a landlord. Sounds like it still would be in the needs of the public use. Would that be a correct statement? As even like a 1% possibility, even though it's a little bit out there, I understand.
Personally, I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think, realistically, I don't think that it
You
would
would take all
pass
that
the,
on at one time.
yeah.
Plus, we know it is a $10 million cost simply to make that building up to code as it stands with all of the existing walls. That's the estimate that the library gave us, brought up to current dollars, and our engineer has vetted it. So that means if you simply took the library, replaced all of the systems because they're all beyond use, you added in an elevator and all of the ADA uses, and essentially took that building and made it up to code as it exists right now as a classroom, that is a $10 million expense. Adaptive use, removing walls, those types of things are the additional expenses that would go beyond the 10 million. So
You're
it's an
referring
expensive cost.
to the Brookline School.
For the Brookline School, correct. I meant the Brookline School. If I
Okay.
misspoke, the hour is for me well beyond almost close to bedtime.
But I do believe that previously, that building was used exactly for those purposes. It was used for childcare purposes and the Surrey Center. So it might not need as much renovation and, reformatting as the library might have needed on that site as well. Just kind of throwing it out there, like maybe the way that the classrooms are set up is already relatively functional for a childcare setting.
They have to pay the costs of the renovation in their rental? Because they might not be able to afford that.
I don't know. I just wanted to
We
mention it.
appreciate
Thank you
everybody's
very
opinion.
much. I appreciate it.
I had said,
Do you want, go ahead if you have, ask.
The only question I have is regarding the library. We know it's the driving factor here. Has other sites been looked at for building a new library?
there are no available other sites within the township. I made numerous presentations over the last few years. We were there are no available sites for the library to build a new location. There just aren't in this township. There's very little open space that we could do that. So no, there are no other sites that are even as a potential, and that's why we were deciding how to deal with the renovations in conjunction with this building. But if the school board had not decided that they were willing to give us that building, we wouldn't be having this discussion. The renovations would have moved forward, and all of these discussions tonight would have been moot.
So it's an either-or situation. It either goes to Brookline or it gets renovated.
There's no other options that we are, and we looked, there is a presentation, it's on my website, showing options that we investigated and that there were no other options, and that was, I'm going to estimate about 2014 or 15. It's still on my website, and there were no other options then, and certainly there's no other available land now. This occurred because the changes in the school board leadership willing to work with us.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming and certainly voicing your opinions and